Wonderful, we're reaching the last part of this lecture. In the previous video we talked about goal setting theory. I would like now to move on to SMART goals, and I would just like to review the acronym with you. So SMART goals, the first letter stands for specific, target a specific area for improvement. M indicates measurable, a quantifier or at least suggests an indicator of progress. A can be interpreted as assignable, achievable, or attainable. So specify who will do it. R for realistic, stable results can realistically be achieved given available resources. And finally, time related, specify when the result or results can be achieved. Now, to review the differences and combination and similarities between motivation interviewing versus standard counseling, one of the main ways to understand that is going from a two-phase process to the concept of flow. So in other coaching counseling techniques, some of which are definitely older than motivation interviewing, a session was seen as being comprised and moved through two main phases. In phase one, the important was about making a change with an emphasis on invoking and supporting change talk. And phase two happened when the client was ready to follow up, so to plan ahead, to create a schedule, to make a plan. And so in this sense, there was no much of a difference with any other behavioral or behaviorist psychological counseling. And so as a therapist, as a counselor, the professional was there to guide and educate the client to develop a plan that will allow the client to change. In motivation interviewing, instead, we have engaging, focusing, evoking, and planning as processes. Okay, so motivation interviewing, as we will see, it's a strategy, it's a technique, but it's also a different attitude. It's a style. So to review, engaging indicates skills that are used first and throughout the conversation. So when you encounter resistance, you as a health coach, as a counselor, you need to attend to engagement again. So you're there for your client, but the client also needs to be there for the conversation, to be paying enough cognitive and emotional attention to be present. Now, focusing on a particular direction to address may be done once in a session and may need to be revised often. And this is because there might be just one goal that's clear at the beginning of the conversation, maybe multiple goals intertwined, connected. But very often, in fact you could say more often than not, this happens as the conversation progresses throughout the counseling sessions. If there is not a focus on focusing, permitting the repetition here, then we could argue that as a health coach you cannot make the same dent in the behavioral change process in your client. Motivation interviewing as technique, as approach, as skill, this is especially true in evoking, because evoking is both an element of the motivation interviewing spirit and is in itself a process. The process that is created, that is activated through open-ended questions. So you're evoking, you're allowing the client to become more aware, and you also allow the client to venture into new things that might be related to the problem the client saw you for, but also be completely unrelated and will bring more insight into different areas that might actually be the most important ones that a client should focus on. Again, should not from a judgmental perspective, but a perspective of goal setting theory. Planning has to do with both what the client is doing during group and also what of engagement you as a counselor, as a coach, are able to bring the conversation to refocus. And this is because the first three steps are, or three processes are true MI session based versus the fourth one, which is an addendum. There are true MI sessions that focus motivation interviewing strategy, techniques, and structure, but you must have a session that is MI consistent without planning if the counselor introduces the idea of forming a plan and encounter too much resistance to proceed. Planning is something that is part and it's also an addendum, all right? You want to make sure though that evoking, focusing, and evoking are always present in your interaction with the client. A quick review of RULE, the acronym RULE: resist, understand, listen, and empower. Resist is especially true for professionals. We should resist the temptation of directing our patient or client, telling them what to do. We are practicing motivation interviewing. The focus should come from the client, the focus on the problem at least, not the shedding light on ambivalence. Understand means understanding their client and what brings them there and where they are in their lives, their principles, their values, and possible obstacles and barriers. Listen means listen in a cognitive sense, but also in an empathetic sense. So again, everything that we seek to understand, we need to pay attention to. Okay. And finally, since the focus on the client, empower them. Okay? Empower them to be their own masters, therapeutically speaking. Darn C or darn cat, I would like to focus on the first 5 here. Desire, ability, reasons, need, and commitment. Desire, why do you want to make this change? Ability, do you have the tools to make this change? Reasons, any specific reason or motivator, so on the opposite side of a trigger and a stressor, what pushes you. Need, again, in this context we can use scaling, so how important is this thing for you on a scale of 0 to 10, both quote-unquote good and bad. So how important it is to smoke on a scale of 0 to 10, how important it is to exercise on a scale of 0 to 10, and then of course, as we mentioned in a previous video, you will have an appropriate reaction when a person tells you, I feel I'm ready to exercise, and I will rate that a 5 out of 10. Okay? So rather than jumping ahead and asking the client again, why a 5 and not a 6 out of 10, so that you can push forward, you want to empower the client. So you might want to ask first, why did you rate it a 5 out of 10 rather than a 4 out of 10? And this should at least help the client raise awareness of the fact that there are more positive things that they might actually be either willing to admit, or will not be too strong a word, or aware of such positive motivator. And then, in practice, commitment, what action will you take to make this happen? Again, there are 2 more letters, A and T, but we will talk about this later. What techniques can we use? Affirmations, we can use reflection, so all the OARS that are core techniques within motivation interviewing, but especially moving forward, once you practice motivation interviewing in the future, thinking about siding with negative, focusing on self-efficacy, empowerment, the techniques used to listen, so listen reflectively as part of your reflection. Of course, being non-judgmental, avoiding any type of arguments, and then use some other psychological techniques such as reframing, reshaping, helping the client see things from a different perspective. Again, the point is not to project your own perspective on what you believe should be done in the context, but allow the client to reach that goal from themselves if it combines with your approach. It doesn't have to be identical. In other words, your client's goal do not have to match your own, of course. You have to resist that, resist the temptation to tell them what to do. But once the client is clear toward themselves and you about what they want to achieve, then you want to make sure that you do that with a gentle care and non-judgmental self, and definitely by avoiding any type of argument.